Alright, greetings humans, everybody. This is going to be the fourth and last, whichever you may call it, sequence, episode of this mannequin thingy. So, where do I begin? As you can see, I'm currently animating this on Flip-a-Clip, and it's at, 24 frames a second. Right now, I am currently just been doing the same thing over and over and over again. Like, this was probably one of the most tedious projects I could ever give myself. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm erasing the background of every single frame of this mannequin rotating 360 degrees. Mainly just because there's a lot of noise in my background. There's a lot of happening and whatnot, which can really take away of what's happening in the foreground, which is this mannequin. So I purposely took away the background so, the character doesn't get lost in it and whatnot. So I have this really, neighbor mowing, but I also have this strategy that I've kind of tuned up with this, especially how far I've gotten. So basically I would just trace out my mannequin, nice and small, like, where it's like super pixely, and then I'd go in and I'd erase the majority of the background, and then I'd go back in again and erase whatever's in between that I couldn't get. So basically I have to do like 3 rounds of erasing the background for every frame, as well as in some frames whenever the pole becomes in front of either the foot or the foot goes behind one of the pedestals, I have to go in and color it so that way it still looks like it's completely floating and no strings attached and whatnot. So this is a very tedious project, but it will be very dope whenever it is done. Sorry, I haven't talked in a while, so I'm yawning because I'm not used to talking. And whatnot. So, just in case you haven't watched any of the other episodes of this, basically, the sole purpose of this is for me to start to learn and have a good understanding of how people and characters should look in any direction, basically angle of course, standing up and down. But I also have a lot of other different poses that I'll be working with. So whenever I have a character that exerts a certain type of personality that I want to express through their pose, I can do that because I have a multitude of poses to work from. I have 10 right now, and I'll be more than happy to add more to my collection, since in theory I won't be doing a buttload of different poses in one sitting, one project, So in this will also help me kind of learn how to draw human anatomy, because I am still kind of like, I'm not confident in my drawing and whatnot, and like I'm not very much a good drawer, but references are my savior. So lo and behold, I have a mannequin as a reference for a very basic human anatomy and whatnot. Obviously I shouldn't take it to I should understand how the mannequin looks with a grain of salt, because, excuse me, again, because it has a skirt for the hips and it has literal balls for joints, when in reality he is more smooth transitions between body parts on a human. Not to say that I won't even eventually make characters that may look more malnourished or more plump than this mannequin is. So, but knowing the basics is good before advancing. Now you can see here, I used a lot of different shades of green to kind of spice up the backgrounds from here and there, because, you know, every full 360 project that I did took about a full day. So I was, you know, I was a little mind numb, working on the same thing every day. And whatnot. So this here is the typical T-pose, one of the very last projects I would be working on. Why I did the T-pose, I'm not 100% sure. I guess it's just because I was like thinking of possible poses to do, and I was like, oh, 3D models, T-poses are a common thing, so I did a T-pose and whatnot. I also did like a normal standing pose, but I think the way I had the mannequin, he's slouching a little. Oh my god, stop yawning. I'm getting mad at myself for yawning so much. It's getting annoying. So let's see, it's also a bit fascinating to, while looking at what I'm doing, how the hands are sticking straight out, and then as it's rotating, the arms slowly start to shrink almost because of how it's facing the camera. Most of the length kind of starts to overlap, making it look shorter, which is kind of cool. Drawing it might be kind of difficult without making it legitimately look short. Whatnot. So you can see whenever I do a lot of the beam replacing, I'm grabbing colors that are the closest to the beam, the pole, and kind of covering over the pole with an airbrush tool, so that way it not only has a lot of pigment in it, it's not very transparent, but it also has a very soft outside to it. You know, it's not like a hard. Well, let's take an example of like a hard pencil and a soft pencil. So like a pencil H. You know, those are very hard. It's very clean cut, precise pencil. But then you have like the B pencils, which are softer, so it's a little bit blurry like. That's basically what I was doing with the airbrush, to kind of blur it out, to make it blend in and have like soft transitions between shading like this wood does, because it's very it's all very rounded out. It's all a whole lot of just cones and cans, tubes, whatever that shape is. So it's often very round, and the lighting just kind of rolls off of it. And there's also sometimes a little bit of rim lighting, which is, you know, very subtle on this guy, especially since I don't have harsh lighting on it and whatnot. You can also see all of these black lines all over this mannequin. I did that on purpose, which was to help me understand the facing of the mannequin. So as you can see, I basically drew it on every side of it. So I have lines on the front, the back, and almost directly centered side and left and right siding. so that way I can have an understanding of how the mannequin is facing at any angle. So like this angle right here, I would probably have a hard time understanding where the face would be facing, or like how many degrees it's tilted to one side or the other. But having that line indicating that is either directly in the center or slightly off center gives me information of how the face should be faced, as well as especially on the arms and legs, since there is no differentiating shape on them. It's kind of hard to tell what it's angled like sometimes. You can tell by the feet and the arms because of their joints and then how they're shaped. So they have like that rounded top and then that harsh cut on the inside to indicate that like the palm and whatnot that kind of caves in. So that is something that I also did to this mannequin to help me understand how it looks, I guess. Just as guidelines. They're basically just guidelines and whatnot. A lot of times whenever you draw the face and you draw like, you know, the circle for the chrome, the dome of the head, and then a angled line of where the face is facing. That's where it normally be cuts in half, where it goes straight down the forehead, cuts through the nose, and, you know, down the lips and chin, as kind of like a center point. So, and there you can see the final product right there. I slowed that down to where you can actually see it rotate, and you would actually be able to see that it is fairly clean of a spin. And whatnot. This is weird. I don't remember doing yellow as a background. I think that's like a extremely bright green, limey green. But I don't know, whatever. A background's a background, in my opinion. So this was another fun pose I decided to do. A lot of these poses I found were on Pinterest of like, I don't know, people modeling for just a bunch of random poses and whatnot. And this one was kind of fun looking because it was very extreme almost. It had a very loud expression on it of either it's running or it's just you know, that famous Black Widow pose that she always does when she lands, where she has like one leg that crunches up to her side, and then the opposite arm is on the floor, and then one arm is sticking straight up and one leg is extended super far. It's kind of like one of those extreme landing poses where you might like get down really low before exploding into a sprint or a run or a jump or some kind of like crazy tackling fighting move, something like that, which could be a lot of fun. And this is also one of those more complicated poses, because you could see like now this mannequin is completely facing the back side of us, and the leg is at an interesting angle to where it looks smaller than its other leg because it's extended way forward and whatnot. So, yep. Alrighty, what else? So I believe one of these mannequin positions I accidentally did twice, which is very disappointing to realize that you did. I believe it was just a typical standing pose. This one was also a little bit difficult to cut out at times. It's just because all of the limbs were extended at different angles, making them for sharper angles. I say angles a lot. I'm not sure if that's always the correct terminology for this, but you can see there's like a lot of sharp, very close joint positions, I guess, especially like in between the legs, in between the arms, where the torso kind of bends forward. It's where it's very sharp, so I wasn't able to get really close with the big erasers, as well as whenever I was erasing like all of the background around the mannequin. It was always hard because the arms were so extended, so I wasn't able to get super close to the mannequin all the time and whatnot. And this project, although it took a month to get all this done, it was a very short project, especially since all of these were roughly a second long. I think technically half of them shouldn't have been a second long, but since I copied another frame at the very end to make it 24 frames and whatnot. But there was one that was like officially under it, because it was like 22 or something, 23, no, 22. So that one was left under a second, and then all of them were either exactly 24 frames or a frame or two over it. And then there was one that was 36 frames. So yeah, that one was the longest one, but it was also the smoothest one, because it the movements, the rotations were a lot more smaller, so the frames were able to blend together much, smoother, nicer, especially since the movement was also very accurate to each other. Like, it wasn't suddenly it went fast and slow then fast again. It was all relatively the same amount of movement with every rotation and pictured it took. And if you don't know, I sat down and took pictures of every single frame here and then put it in Flip-A-Clip, so now I am erasing the background. So this, in a way, is also a little bit of stop motion. It is not the best work of stop motion, because not only does the mannequin slide back a little bit from a lot of the rotation a little bit, but it's also, I would say, with like all the mannequin poses that I did, there was a bit of inconsistency with speeds that I did. I did some that were kind of medium. I did one or two that was kind of fast, and then I did one that was like, extremely slow. So, I'm not very consistent with spacing and timing in stop motion, but I am learning to understand it in 2D drawing animation and whatnot. This here was probably the brightest green I could find, and this is probably like also the definition of a green screen color. I think at this point I realized, I was like, oh, I could actually use this green as green screening. Let me use the most iconic shade of green for green screening. This is also the very last pose of the mannequin. And this was the standing still position I was talking about, have been talking about. And you can see, whenever we start getting more to the side poses, you can kind of see him angled a little down. I think I accidentally made him slouch a little bit, or at least just look down. So I'm not quite sure if that's needing to be fixed. But I feel like I did make him like slouch down a little bit, which is a bad back position. It's bad for your back. You shouldn't slouch. It hurts. Especially one that has a bit of the weak muscles. I know. So as you can see here, compared to the last mannequin I did, since this one was a lot more just kind of one shape, it didn't like stretch out in all different directions, I was actually able to get a little bit more done with the less time, just because, you know, my big fat eraser, when I went to erase the whole background, was able to get more background as well as get closer to the mannequin. So I was able to go a bit faster on this last stretch, which gave me a lot of enthusiasm to get this project done and whatnot. I would say at times it was a bit hard to erase the pole, just because I couldn't tell if there was gapping in between the legs or not, that the pole was directly in front of, kind of blocking it. So it was hard to tell whether the pole needed to just be covered up or erased at times. So there's that, and then the legs will definitely look a little fuzzy when observing them up close while the rotation is happening, which is, you know, I'm not really sure if there's anything to be fixed on that, other than just knowing how the mannequin should look, and then my brain just filling in the rest, realizing, oh yeah, leg should be there. Nah, leg doesn't have to be there. And with that, this is the finished line. I'm finally done. And this concludes the very last and final episode for making the mannequins and whatnot. So this project was a very good experiment to not only see how well I could do with just working on a tedious project for a very long period of time, but also to see how smoothly the stop motion, the animation kind of was with, you know, just taking pictures of it, because for a while when I was just taking all the pictures, I didn't know how well it was going to turn out. And it actually came out fairly well. The transition from frame to frame was fairly smooth and whatnot. And although it took so much of my time, I am happy that I went and got rid of the background, because now all I can focus on is just the mannequin. There's nothing distracting from it. There's no background distracting from it. There's no podium or pole that's attached to it. It is clean cut. And definitely next time, if I do something this big, I will use other resources and websites to help shorten the time span of working on this, you know, working smarter, not harder. and whatnot. But I am very excited to use these for my upcoming projects. I'm currently working on one now that has human characters instead of animals, so I will definitely be using these mannequins as a good model. So, you know, I'd like your opinions. Tell me what you think. What you like, what you dislike. Any suggestions for future projects or just any improvement. Or just any general thoughts. Yeah. Bye!